Welcome to Forward Ever, Leading in Challenging Times, presented by Worth Wealth Management, a weekly conversation with area leaders about how to persevere during uncertain times. Now here's your host, Gary Shorman.
Hi, and welcome to Forward Ever, Leading in Challenging Times. Our guest today is Dr. Seth Castle, a professor at Fort Hays State University and an award-winning professor at that. We're going to talk about his story in just a moment. But first off, Dr. Castle, welcome to our program.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, Gary.
You know, you've received a couple of special honors, and I'm actually just going to read this off of here, but the National Association of Student Affairs gave you a honor for Veterans Knowledge and Community Ally and Advocate Award, and you also had the Max Gabriel Veterans Mental Health Award from the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And so you come from a veterans background, and just this last month you were awarded a really unique program that starts with George W. Bush and the Institute called Stand to Veteran Leadership Program. Congratulations on that.
Thank you so much.
You know, at Fort Hays State, you're an associate professor, but you're also part of the director of military program innovation at Fort Hays State University. And tell me first a little bit about what you do at Fort Hays State that's involved with the military and how you got involved with that.
Okay, so as you said, half of my job is as the director of military program innovation, and that kind of spurred from a strategic enrollment program that Fort Hays invested in a couple years ago to really invest in our military and veteran communities. What the main function of that half of my job is that I develop new programs and partnerships to help our military and veteran community complete their degree programs, take advantage of all the training and experience that they have in the military. And, we've been really successful with a couple different programs so far, including we have our Associate of Applied Science program for the military that lets service members, that are in about their first 3 to 4 years of their military program, they can complete their associate's degree in 1 year. We've also started a partnership with the Kansas Army National Guard for an officer candidate school program and a military science and leadership minor. And I'll kind of stop there on that because they'll talk about more when I talk about what we're doing with the George W. Bush Foundation. But the whole idea is just to truly invest in our military community and help our service members as they either move through their military career or transition out of the military into the civilian career with all of their educational goals.
Well, Seth, our program talks about leadership in challenging times. And obviously in the military, there's opportunity, a lot of opportunity for leadership. And sometimes it's not when you expect it. The George W. Bush Stand To program is a unique group of, I think it's 34 people from around the country that get to participate in this program. First off, what's the Stand To program? What are they actually, who set that up and what's that about?
So that is the Stand To Veterans Leadership Program is a part of the George Bush Institute, and that program specifically is invested in strengthening the veterans community. They also have presidential leadership scholars, and they have a couple other programs. As I said, this specifically is geared towards developing those who are invested in the veterans community. So it doesn't necessarily have to be people who have served in the military. It can be military spouses, but it needs to be people who are working in that sector to address really the complex issues that are facing the veterans community. And so as a part of this, it is a leadership development program. So, I'll fly to Texas for about 4 days for 5 months. And with that, we do we hear from a lot of really high level speakers, Bob McDonald, and we'll hear from President Bush and a lot of high level national speakers as part of the leadership development curriculum. In addition to that, though, every scholar has what's called a personal leadership project. And so part of your application process to become a scholar is you have to pitch this project that is going to impact the military veteran community in some way.
Well, what are you looking forward to? Because over 5 months, you're going to get to know this group of 34 other leaders from across the country. But what are you looking forward to, Seth?
I'm really looking forward to the growth. I'm looking forward to the opportunity to interact with people who have worked with the veteran community and the military community really at the highest levels of our nation, because as you're no doubt aware, problems look very different from the 20,000-foot level. And to see, I may know what some of the problems facing our community look like at the ground level, but it's very different when you look at them from a high level. So gaining a new vantage point as to what people see at different levels through the speakers, and then also the networking that comes along with this. I'm going to be interacting with some of the best minds that tackle issues facing our community. So I'm just looking forward to those opportunities.
Well, you talked about a special project that when you apply for this, that you get a chance to really look at going into the future. What's your project about?
So I have developed a Bachelor's of Applied Science and Applied Leadership program at Fort Hays, and that actually just as of last month was approved by the Kansas Board of Regents, and it will go forward to the Higher Learning Commission to probably be approved in the next 6 months. And that program, I mentioned the Associate of Applied Science program that Fort Hays has that allows service members to complete an associate's degree and a certificate in leadership studies in 1 year. The Bachelor's of Applied Science will build off of that. And what it'll do is it'll allow people, service members who are roughly mid-career service members, because they've accumulated lots of training and experience, to then leverage that for a bachelor's degree program. And they'll be able to complete their bachelor's degree in 2 years.
When the average citizen looks at what somebody does in the military, do they really understand, unless you have a family member involved, do you think the average citizen actually understands what a military or a veteran goes through?
Probably not, but that's, just because the military is such a different line of work, or a different life experience for someone than really anything that exists in the civilian world. Like, I'm sure everyone's well aware that you join the military, whatever branch, and you go through your basic training, and then you'll probably go to some type of schooling to get a job. But I think what a lot of people miss is that service members in all branches are continually going through training and education through the entire time that they're in uniform. And so really the purpose of this is to help capture all that, because service members aren't just like doing, 2-3 months of training when they start their time in the military and that's it, right? They're learning and growing as professionals in their trade the entire time. And so that's the goal of this, is to really take advantage of all of that, because service members are doing the work and we just want to capture it in a way that's going to allow them to leverage it for their education.
There's different levels too. There's the group that has come back from some really tough situations. There's some mental illness side of things. And then there's just the leadership part of it, of how you transition into a career outside of the military. Are there any special interest in that you're focusing on?
Yes, absolutely. I have. I've done some significant work in the mental health community, as far as I published a couple children's books a few years ago on PTSD and military families that were pretty successful in getting them into the hands of the people that needed them. And I think that we've probably come a long way towards addressing the stigma associated with mental health, especially the military sector. I think we probably still have a long ways to go. And so, we had 20 years of war in 2 places. So you get the Department of Veterans Affairs. They say that there's been about 3 million service members that served during that time. The Department of Veterans Affairs estimates that 10 to 30% of those people struggle with PTSD in some way. And so that's a pretty high number of people that are hurting and could use some help. And so, that was the point of the books that I wrote, was to help start conversations, to help people, make their families stronger.
One of the things that I know goes into this is your background. Seth, I want to take a quick break and then we'll come back and talk about your background in leadership and what kind of put you at Fort Hays State University.
Yeah,
Our guest is Dr.
absolutely.
Seth Campbell, Assistant Professor of Leadership Studies and Director of Military Programs at Fort Hays State University. Back with more after this.
The most successful investors are those that can keep their emotions in check and take a longer-term view at what portfolios will be worth 3 to 5 years down the road. I'd say that's the most important in determining what investor outcomes are. Market corrections will continue in the future. We've seen many of them over the years, only to see equity prices rise higher, and that'll be the case in the future.
Worth Wealth Management, enhancing lives and strengthening families.
Welcome back to Forward Ever, leading in challenging times with our guest, Dr. Seth Gassel, Fort Hays State University, and an award winner, in fact, participating in the Stand 2 Veterans Program that's coming up over the next 5 months, an exciting program involving 34 individuals from around our country. Seth, working at Fort Hays State University in the Leadership Studies program, a part of that. I want to go back a little bit. Where did you learn your leadership skills?
That's going back more than a little bit, Gary.
I understand.
But no, I would say that I got my foundation in the Army. I was
Because you were first sergeant, right? In the Army?
Yes,
Yes.
I was a first sergeant. I retired from the Army in 2014. But that said, that's I had 16 years in the military. I was an Army reservist. I was in the unit here in Hays, Kansas. And we deployed to Afghanistan in January of 2002. And came home for 4 months, went back for the invasion of Iraq, and we were there from 2000 from we crossed the border just 16 days after the first ground troops entered the country, and we were there till April of 2004. So quite a pretty long stint of time there, and I learned a lot and I grew a lot during that time. During that time I was a sergeant, which is like the first level of leadership mostly that you experience in the Army. So I had some really, really good mentors. And I remember when I came back, I was trying to get back into college and everything. And I found out that there was an organizational leadership program here at Fort Hays. And so I decided to try that out. And I really, really enjoyed the classes. So it was something that allowed me to take what I knew worked and really put theory to it and kind of connect those two, and it's allowed me to kind of replicate some successful practices. I learned a lot through my time in the military, but also just learning through studying leadership, because I got my organizational leadership degree from Fort Hays in 2005, and I went on to get a master's of science in leadership in 2009, and eventually my doctorate in educational leadership in 2017. So I say that just to say that I've done a lot as far as studying theory and things of that nature. But I've got quite a bit of practice, both in the military and civilian sectors. I worked retail for a number of years, and I worked in a couple different leadership positions in higher education as well.
Well, I mentioned I had a question earlier when I talked about the average citizen understanding what goes on. When you talk about serving in Afghanistan, that whole situation over there, I have a hard time imagining what that would be like every day doing that. But over there, in the leadership side of things, were there any specific situations that you felt kind of led to say, this is the way a real leader should lead when you were over there serving our country?
I had mentioned that I had some really good mentors, and I was incredibly fortunate that I went with some of the same people. I said that I was deployed twice, right? And so, two, like really just back to back. And I had some of the same mentors that were with me on that same, on both deployments, that walked me through not only what does good leadership look like, but I saw from lots of other examples what bad leadership looked like. And you learn from that, right? You learn from that just as much as you do the good leaders. Just the good leaders take care of their people, right? And that's never more evident than it is in a time of war. And I saw that day in and day out for multiple years of my life. See the people that I looked up to as leaders taking care of their people, and that looks a lot of different ways. Everything from, like, in the early days, there was days that we didn't have water, right? And we didn't have food because we had outpaced the logistics trains, and we're digging out of the trash, trying to find stuff. And that's what it was in the super early days of the war. That said, if you fast forward to what it's like in Garrison, maybe it's just making sure that people have everything taken care of as far as their pay, or taken care of as far as what they need for their career, or psychologically, or just support as a human being. I think there's a lot of different facets to that, and I was able to see good and bad for both of those.
Well, I think we all have to learn from that, and that's one of the neat things about this program. Get to meet some great people like yourself that are doing and leading in many ways, and at Fort Hays State University, a lot of leaders there. But I really appreciate the work. Not only appreciate you serving the country, but the work to do to help those that have served transition. So thank you for all of your efforts.
Thank you so much, Gary.
Now, you're going to be done in what, 6 months, into 5 months with your tour. Will you join us again and tell us what all you learned?
Absolutely, yeah. So as I say, I go to Dallas for 5 months. Actually, it's a 5-month program. I actually go to Dallas for 4 months. In October, we actually go to Washington D.C. For that month, for the stint that we'll spend with the program that month. So absolutely, I'd love to come back and talk to you in November and see what things look like on the other side of this.
All right, look forward to that. Our guest today has been Dr. Seth Castles, Assistant Professor of Leadership Studies and Director of Military Program Innovation at Fort Hays State University. Appreciate you joining us, and thanks for all you've done. Our guest is at Fort Hays State University, and we hope to have you back. Seth, thank you so much.
Thank you, Gary.
Our program is brought to you by Worth Wealth Management, where you can live with confidence. I'm Gary Shorman.
Thanks for joining us for Forward Ever, Leading in Challenging Times, presented by Worth Wealth Management. Join us right here next week for another episode with host Gary Shorman. Until then, remember to move forward ever, backward never.